So number 10 on the list is sexy aliens. I've thought of it. You've thought of it. There's been 1,000 memes about it. What happens if we storm Area 51 and there's a bunch of sexy aliens in there that give you weird feelings in your pantalones? This would really shake up the dating scene because I know at least one of you guys out there is gonna try and sleep with one of these sexy googas. Hey, and it might be cool, like every time Captain Kirk did it in Star Trek. Captain Kirk laid more pipe across the universe than BP oil with a hyperdrive. But what if you catch some sort of weird alien STD that turns your junk into a squid and then you have to keep it moist or your little ding dong is gonna fall off? Or what if you fall in love with your new hot space lady and then you try to get married but people protest it and then you gotta legalize alien human marriage? So much stress. But I guess if no one else wants to smooch the drop dead star lady, I'll take one for the team. Number 9. That one alien that was in containment for a reason. So my fellow Area 51 attackers, when we inevitably break down the walls and free our oppressed alien friends, the first thing we're probably going to do is start opening doors. So there is a chance that we're going to let something out that was locked up for a reason. You could bust open a containment cell thinking you're going to get a plasma rifle, and then the next thing that pops out is something that looks like Cthulhu crossed with the devil, and it's grabbing all your friends and shoving them up its butt because that's where it keeps its food for later. Just remember, we should find the guidebook to all the secret rooms before we start opening doors, so we don't accidentally wake up Dracula and then start the end of mankind. Number 8. Teleportation devices. If there's anything I'm certain of, it's that there has to be some sort of experimental teleportation device locked away in that secret base. And once I get my hands on it, you'll never need to sit on an 8-hour flight with a screaming baby again. You want to go to Cuba? We're there in a second. You want to go across the universe and play some super cool alien video games? Yeah, we'll do that in a snap. When this thing is out in the wild, we're gonna tear down the car, airplane, bus, and every other transportation industry. It's only super cool teleporting from here on out. And it would be so much better for the environment. We would be giving the world a better way to travel and saving Mother Nature all at the same time. It's so beautiful. The only rule for the teleportation machine is no creepers. If you blink into someone's bedroom or pop into their shower, your teleportation rights are taken away for life. No questions asked. Number 7. A doomsday device. I'm talking about like a mega weapon. Something that makes a nuclear warhead look like one of my farts after Taco Tuesday. Something like a little watch that when you press a button on it, a giant laser shoots down from a satellite and melts a whole town. Or maybe some bioengineered super virus that's like Ebola on steroids and 6 cups of coffee, like me right now. If there's such a thing that exists, it's definitely in Area 51 and we could find it. I hope if there is a doomsday device, it's something that incapacitates a whole town but does it in a nice way, like turns everyone into ducks. Yeah, like a giant duck ray that turns a whole country of hardworking people trying to get that bread into a bunch of mallards who only live, well, also to get that bread. Number 6. Genetically engineered super kids. Test tube babies. What would happen if you raised a kid in a completely controlled environment with no variables and every part of their life was scheduled? Kids that were genetically engineered in a lab to be perfect in every way. From the time they were hatched out of their little pods, their brains are programmed for whatever you want them to do. These kids would be like Jason Bourne times 1 million. This one I could definitely believe. Why wait for the perfect soldier to join the army when you could just grow one from scratch? If you had a baby perfectly made in a lab from the time it was born, you could potentially make the perfect person. Or at least you could keep trying until you got it right and then you just throw the bad ones out into the desert, I guess. Number 5. Spaceships. This one is guaranteed. If we all go into Area 51 and there's no spaceships, I'll be so choked. Like, dude, what the hell, Area 51? You had one job and you blew it. Imagine we raid the whole place and the only vehicle in there is a 1997 Toyota Corolla with some guy named Fred who's just trying to get her going, but she just doesn't want to start. But for sure, there's gonna be a super speed flying saucer that we can jack and start traveling across the world. I would love that. We could start an MTV show called Party Saucer, where we use the tractor beam to pull random people off the street into the UFO. They get inside and it's a massive rave. Or we could just do a huge food tour across the whole world. Traveling at these speeds, we could do the whole thing in like a weekend. Number 4, the gravity reactor. Okay, with all the crazy stuff we talked about on this list, this one is actually openly talked about by people who claim to have worked at Area 51. If you want a detailed breakdown on this, start researching Bob Lazar. He's a scientist who said he's worked hands-on with one of these devices. I'm going to try and explain it, but remember, I'm dumb, so I really don't even understand what I'm saying. So this reactor uses an element called element 115, which allows the reactor to bend gravity. With this, you can create gravity in front of the reactor and move at insane speeds. It can also distort light and become invisible. This reactor could be used on weapons and ships, and again, I really have no idea what I'm talking about, so if you want more info, look up Bob Lazar. There's a whole Rogan episode with him in it. Number 3, space weapons. There's got to be some closet somewhere packed with every made-up space movie weapon ever. We can bust them all out and finally see which one is better. All meet in the center of the base and duel it out. Energy swords versus lightsabers, gravity gun versus portal gun. We could spend weeks in there just trying out all these different weapons. I know I would want some sort of power armor or Iron Man suit, not to fight anyone with, I would just love getting around a little easier and opening jars of pickles. Number 2, all the presidents. A big rumor on the internet is that if you become an American president, you never die. You are given a super secret live forever formula and you get to live out your days in secrecy. Now you can travel the world and do whatever you want with unlimited access to money and resources. But every president must return to Area 51 to get juiced up again with this super secret live forever formula. I mean, it seems like a pretty sweet deal. And number 1 on our list, a time machine. Alright, time for the big one, guys. What would any of us want more than a time machine? You could become some sort of time lord and change the world as you see fit. Go back and ask that girl out that you were too scared to, take all your parents' money and invest it in Amazon stocks, or just try what a peach tastes like before we sucked all the nutrients out of the soil. I think if I had a time machine, I would go way back to like caveman time and just bring some dope belongings and then become their god. They would pray to me all day and bring me like sweet pelts and stuff. Either that or go way into the future where everyone's hooked up to like virtual reality paradises, and then I would just get plugged in and then leave all you guys behind. Live my perfect life in the virtual world. Or I might take the time machine and then just go back in time 5 minutes and kiss myself on the lips, just because saying that I think made a lot of you guys uncomfortable.
Number 10, 2 white lights. Okay, so this didn't happen in the States, but Canada. And all I'm saying is that Biden could get some info out of Mr. Trudeau if he really wanted to. On January 29th, 2023, Canadian air traffic controllers and pilots couldn't identify 2 white lights moving in a circular pattern reported over Canada's Northwest Territories. Good evening, just wondering, do you got 2 planes that are just to the east of your field doing circuits or maneuvers? A crew member aboard the Canadian North flight headed to Yellowknife asked their traffic controllers. Negative, I have no reported traffic in the area, the Yellowknife air traffic controller replied. Do you have a visual on something? The crew responded somewhat hesitantly, yeah, we're looking at 2 lights dancing around here to the east of your field. They're above us, about I don't know what. We're not seeing them on TCAS, traffic collision avoidance system, but we can see the lights moving around. Then there's a pause before the crew member radios back to say, we're not crazy. No, we believe you, the air traffic controller replies, and the sighting remains unexplained. I need answers, people. Why are there just 2 random lights in the sky? Number 9, over New Mexico. On February 21st, 2021, a pilot flying over New Mexico at an altitude of 37,000 feet reported seeing a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast over the top of them, according to the published audio. American Airlines confirmed that the radio transmission came from Flight 2292. The FAA a few days later stated a pilot reported seeing an object over New Mexico shortly after noon local time on Sunday, February 21st, 2021. FAA air traffic controllers did not see any object in the area on their radar scopes. Seems like air traffic control can never see these objects, but the pilots can, and I can't tell if that's better or worse. Number 8. Shot down object over Alaska. On February 10th, 2023, aka like a month ago, the US military shot down an unidentified airborne object over northeastern Alaska. US officials said they believed the object to be a balloon, but couldn't confirm it since it broke into pieces after hitting the ocean, the New York Times reported. How convenient. News outlets owned by the Chinese Communist Party said Biden's response has shown the world how immature and irresponsible the US has been in dealing with this case. Oof, even other people are criticizing him. Number 7. Shot down object over Lake Huron. On February 12, 2023, just 2 days later, a US F-16 jet shot down an unidentified object over Lake Huron. An octagonal object with strings hanging from it was detected over northern Montana, Wisconsin, and the upper peninsula of Michigan at 20,000 feet. This was believed to be the same object tracked over Montana and monitored by the government the night before. Melissa Dalton, Assistant Defense Secretary of Homeland Defense, and General Glenn Venherk, head of U.S. North Command, say officials could not definitively assess what the objects were, so they acted out of an abundance of caution to protect U.S. security and interest. These most recent objects did not pose a military threat, but their path and proximity to sensitive DoD sites and the altitude that they were flying could be a hazard to civilian aviation and thus raise concerns, Melissa said. Operations are underway with multiple agencies, including the Coast Guard, to gather the object's remains and determine where it came from, they added. And when or if they figure out what it is, I wonder if they'll actually tell us. Probably not though. Number 6. Rosemount UFOs. A man living in Rosemount said he encountered a similar UFO on 4 separate occasions. On August 4th, 2017, the man was near his Rosemount home when he saw what he described as a black object with bright orange lights coming from the craft and flying over the area. Nearly a month later, on September 6, 2017, he saw 3 crafts with the same description hovering above downtown Rosemont. 2 days later, a singular craft returned to Inver Grove Heights, and he spotted the craft one last time on March 12, 2018. The man took photos or videos for each of the events and submitted it to the Mutual UFO Network. Seems like these aliens could have been stalking him, which I think is even more creepy. Number 5. Navy pilots. Recently, 2 former Navy pilots were interviewed by 60 Minutes on CBS News about a UFO sighting over the Pacific Ocean in 2004. Commander Dave Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich spotted the unidentified object during a training exercise, but were unable to classify it. Dave described it as a little white tic-tac looking object, adding that it lacked conventional exhaust plumes and had no wings or visible markings. It also moved erratically, the pilot said. In an interview with NBC News, Dave described the 2004 encounter, calling the object the strangest, most obscure thing I've ever seen flying. As soon as we look down, we see the white water, and then we see this little white tic-tac. It's pointing north-south, and it's just going forward, back, left, right, he said, adding that it was bouncing around like a ping-pong ball. Dave said he approached the mysterious object to take a closer look, and it began mirroring his movements. Then, when the pilot decided to get within half a mile of the UFO, it suddenly vanished. I'm surprised the government even let them do this interview, but my question is, if he did get closer, what were they gonna do? Wave hi to the aliens? Number 4. Multiple objects in the sky. Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot who testified that he witnessed unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP, with his own eyes, and he called on President Joe Biden to investigate the mysterious objects spotted in American airspace. Ryan, a former fighter pilot, explained that after 2014, when upgrades were made to our radar system, our squadron made a startling discovery. There were unknown objects in our airspace. And these were not mere balloons like the Chinese spy balloon that dominated the country's attention in February. These were no mere balloons. They could hold their position, appearing motionless, despite Category 4 hurricane force winds of 120 knots. They did not have any visible means to lift or control surfaces. In other words, nothing that resembled normal aircraft with wings, flaps, or engines. These are not isolated incidents, Ryan said. We have a real UFO problem, and it's not balloons. The point is that we don't have as clear as an understanding of what's above our heads as we thought we did. There are uncertainties up there that we have to deal with. If we don't do it, our adversaries are going to take advantage of that uncertainty, that weakness, to spy on us with various means, as we've seen. It's pretty clear. If there are things over our head that we're not sure what they are, we need to figure it out. If they're adversarial, it's a national security issue. We have mechanisms for that. If it's not a national security issue, and if it's not an adversarial platform, then it's a matter for scientific inquiry. Not gonna lie, this scares me a little. Number 3, leaked video. A leaked Navy video captured in July 2019 showed a sphere-shaped unidentified object flying over water near San Diego. The footage obtained by documentary filmmaker and shared with NBC News appeared to show the mysterious object flying for a few minutes before disappearing into the water. The video was captured by a Navy aircraft and recorded in the USS Alma's Combat Information Center, according to filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. The clip appeared to show a spherical object flying above the water for a few minutes near San Diego before it just vanishes. It splashed, military personnel can be heard saying in the video. The Defense Department confirmed that the clip was recorded by Navy personnel and said that it will be reviewed by the Pentagon's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, a panel established last year to gain insight into the nature and origins of such objects. Number 2. You saw something you shouldn't. In 2008, a large aircraft hovered above Stevensville, Texas. Many people in the community saw it, and according to the Mutual UFO Network, a pilot named Steve Allen reported that the unusual aircraft was flying at an estimated 3,000 miles per hour and was being chased by fighter jets. Then a man named Rick Sorrell said he saw the same thing while hunting. Later, Rick said a strange man knocked on his door and said, "Son, we have the same caliber weapons you have, but we have more of them. You need to shut your mouth about what you saw." Creepy. Was this the Men in Black, people from their government, or real aliens? Who knows, but if that happened to me, I think I'd move out of state. And coming in at number 1 is the Pentagon. The Pentagon's new Office for Investigating Potential UFO Sightings received hundreds of news reports in 2022, and while it can explain more than half of these events, a sizable chunk remains a mystery. Within the new batch of sightings, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office and the Office of Director of National Intelligence say they're focusing on some 171 cases, including some in which objects appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities and require further analysis. Since it was formed last summer, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office has received 366 reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP. That total reflects 247 new UAP reports and another 119 that occurred between March 2021 but hadn't been included in an earlier report. The new numbers indicate a steep rise in UAP sightings. The report released in June 2021 listed just 144 reports, covering a 17-year period. With the subsequent additions, 510 UAP reports were in their files at the end of August 2022. Officials say they believe the rise in UAP reports is due to the US government efforts to destigmatize the topic of UAP and instead recognize the potential risk the phenomenon poses, both as an aviation hazard and potential adversarial activity, such as foreign surveillance efforts. I don't know though, it seems like they're really starting to believe in aliens to me.
Starting off this countdown, we have the butt crack rock. This has to be the funniest thing found on Mars. But basically, in February of 2021, NASA's Perseverance rover was on the planet taking photos. That's when it took a photo of a plump rock with a crack running down it. And immediately, people started making jokes saying that the rock looks like a big old butt crack. In fact, it started when software engineer Kevin Gill saw the rock, tweeted a picture of it, and called it the butt crack rock. From there, it kind of just, snowballed. Glad to see though that people still have a good sense of humor. For that alone, this man deserves a raise. Not all heroes wear capes. In our 9th spot today, we have the giant spoon. Don't worry, when Elon Musk sends us to Mars, you won't have to pack your cutlery. Why? Well, Mars has a number of giant spoons. Let me explain. In 2015, Mars's Curiosity rover discovered what appeared to be a large floating spoon on Mars. Later on, they found another spoon, but this time it wasn't floating and it was much smaller. Unfortunately, it's not actually a spoon, but just rocks that happen to look eerily exactly like one. Either way, it's still pretty weird. Coming in at number 8, we have the blueberries. And no, the tiny small blue fruit were not found on Mars. Blueberries is the name given to these tiny little spheres found on Mars. In 2004, the Mars Opportunity rover spotted these small spheres near the Fram crater. They are about 1 to 2 inches across, so they're about the size of actual blueberries. On top of that, they do have a blue hue to them. Now, these things are weird for a number of reasons. One, the blueberries found within the soil are smaller than the ones found in the outcrops. Why? We don't know. And 2, the size of the blueberries also decrease with decreasing latitude. Why? Again, we don't know. They also don't have any idea what caused them to form these perfect round spheres. Obviously, they have some theories, but they have never been proven. In our 7th spot today, we have the collection of spheres. Now, don't be fooled, these are different than the little blueberry spheres that I just finished talking about. These were discovered in 2012 at an outcrop named Kirkwood. Basically, they look like a bunch of blister-like bumps on the ground. These are even more mysterious than the blueberries though. In fact, rover mission principal investigator Steve Squires said, and I quote, "This is one of the most extraordinary pictures from the whole mission. Kirkwood is chock full of a dense accumulation of these small spherical objects. Of course, we immediately thought of the blueberries, but this is something different. We never have seen such a dense accumulation of spherules in a rock outcrop on Mars. And again, they don't know what these are or what caused their formation. According to NASA, these spheres are different than the blueberries in a number of ways. They differ in concentration, distribution, and structure. That's why they call this collection so puzzling." Moving on to number 6, we have the meteorite. On January 6, 2005, the Opportunity rover found a basketball-sized meteorite on Mars. This is said to be the first meteorite ever discovered on another planet. Upon further investigation, they found that the meteorite was composed of iron and nickel. Now, here's the thing. This find was alarming for a number of reasons. One, according to Steve Squires, and I quote, "Mars should be hit by a lot more rocky meteorites than iron meteorites." Continuing on, he said, "We haven't really thought much about meteorites until now, but this discovery has really opened our eyes to the question. It was a huge surprise. Even NASA workers were baffled by this finding. And now they're doing more investigation on Mars and meteorites. In the end, this can help us learn more about space." We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with the plastic. It's bad enough that we have already polluted one planet with plastic and garbage, but it looks like we're already starting to pollute another as well. So when the Curiosity rover first landed on Mars, they found a piece of plastic on the surface and were like, what the hell? It literally confused NASA. They were like, nah, this can't be plastic wrap, but it was. And the explanation on how it got there is pretty lame, sorry. And it's not really a mysterious one. But basically the plastic came from the rover itself. A piece of wrap from a cable came loose during landing. But like I said before, let's not pollute another planet. Plastic definitely does not belong on another planet or in space at all, for that fact. Coming in at number 4, we have the face on Mars. Now this is probably the creepiest thing ever found on Mars. It was discovered in 1976 when NASA's Viking 1 orbiter flew by Mars. It was taking photos and managed to take a photo of what appears to be a face on Mars. Like it straight up has 2 evil dark eyes, a nose, and a mouth. People think that maybe this is an alien-built monument on Mars to worship an alien god. But of course, NASA just says it naturally formed due to erosion. Either way, it's hella creepy. Coming in at number 3, we have the thigh bone. This one is another pretty creepy one, not gonna lie. Back in 2014, NASA's Curiosity rover sent back multiple photos to Earth. In one of the photos, there seemed to be something sticking out of a collection of rocks, half buried in the dust. Zooming in, it looks like a freaking femur bone from a human thigh, which is scary for a number of reasons. 1, why is there a human bone on Mars? Number 2, what happened to the person that the bone belonged to? Then people were like, whoa, what if it's an alien bone? Especially since it's more crooked than straight like a human femur is. So people were like, yeah, that has to be from an alien. Well, it turns out that upon further investigation, the bone is none other than a rock, not Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, get it? Scientists claim that the shape was created through erosion by wind or water. I know, very anticlimactic. But that doesn't stop people from thinking it's still a real bone. I mean, for all we know, NASA could be lying to us, just saying. Moving on to number 2, we have the Ancient God. In 2015, NASA's Mars Opportunity rover took this picture. It was then uploaded on the Mars's exploration website. Upon closer inspection, people thought that one of the rocks in the photo had a weird design carved into it. In fact, they claimed that it looked like an ancient god's head. I mean, I can see it. The rock has a full-on wavy beard and everything. To UFO enthusiasts, this was more evidence that aliens live on Mars and are carving sculptures and busts of people that they worship. And in our number 1 spot, we have the person. In 2007, people went nuts when the Spirit rover snapped this eerie photo on the planet. It appears to be a human-like figure perched up on a rock. NASA immediately denied this and said, "It's just a rock, people, calm down." But that didn't stop UFO enthusiasts. They believe that this rock is actually a statue of a female figure made by aliens. Maybe this is a god that the aliens bow down to. Not gonna lie, it eerily does look like a female. And that's not the only time a person has been spotted on Mars. They also captured this image as well, which literally looks like an eerie ghostly woman walking on Mars. Like, that one is too creepy. Like, you can't look at that and tell me it's just a rock. I don't believe it. Nice try, NASA.
In our number 10 spot, we have the black helicopters. Apparently outside of Area 51, people have spotted black helicopters fly in and out of the area. It is said that this is the home to the government's secret helicopters. Dating all the way back to the 1970s, people have reported seeing these black helicopters. There were rumors that they were to do with cattle mutilation, toxic chemical releases over neighborhoods. But most people seem to believe that those are just stories to cover up what they're really doing, flying the reptilian leaders in and out. Let's be real. In our number 9 spot, we have studying the spacecraft. There have been a few whistleblowers that have worked at Area 51, and these people have stated that the engineers that are working in the testing area are actually reverse engineering alien spaceships. We can assume they are doing this to figure out how the aliens made these shapes and how they fly so fast. Man, that's so trippy. As far back as the 1950s, people have reported seeing unidentified flying objects at the Southern Nevada military base. One of the whistleblowers, named Bob Lazar, has spoken out about this, and apparently while working in Area 51, he saw flying saucers that were powered by an element called 115. And that was years before that element was recorded as found by humans. Imagine working on an alien spaceship and coming across a whole new metal that's not from this planet. And I'm sure they've discovered things that I wouldn't even be able to dream about in my wildest dreams. In our number 8 spot, we have aliens. Okay, so there is no photographic evidence for this claim, but there have been whistleblowers that have said this to be true. Honestly though, anyone else thinking what I'm thinking? Are the aliens being held hostage? Or are we being held hostage? Let's be real. Most likely they're controlling us, or the aliens are being held hostage by the reptile people that are already here and running mankind. That's it. I'm out. Apparently though, Bob Lazar has said that he walked down a hallway at S4 in Area 51 and he saw a small, gray extraterrestrial between 2 men in lab coats through a small window. Apparently he was told by a guard to stop looking and, move along. There have been other sightings of gray creatures in other secret military bases, such as the one in Dulce, New Mexico, in 1979 by a man by the name of Philip Schneider. So, I believe that Bob is telling the truth. What do you think? Let me know in the comment section below. In our number 7 spot, we have weather control. I've heard about this for quite some time, and I truly feel like if there's something that I could fully get on board with and believe right away, it's the idea that the government controls the weather. Hear me out. First off, being able to do that would be extremely valuable, and honestly, it could make you potentially threatening to your competitors. Don't mess with me, otherwise I will make sure it rains on your country for a full month and all of your crops will suffer. Watch, wars in the future will just be governments messing with each other's weather. That would be wild. If we can make objects fly, if we can send messages through empty space through a phenomena that we call the internet, we call Wi-Fi, we could definitely create a few clouds every now and then. We do have proof though that the government has done research projects to modify clouds in the past, but who knows if there was a conclusion to this experiment, let alone if this experiment took place in Area 51. In our number 6 spot we have the CIA filings. Apparently, up until 2013, we had no idea that Area 51 even officially existed. In 2005, the National Security Archive at George Washington University filed a Freedom of Information Act about the U-2 spy plane program. And so, in 2013, the CIA was forced to declassify documents that related to Area 51. After this reveal, it became known that the military spent 20 years testing aerial surveillance programs called U-2 and Oxcart, and it also confirmed the existence of Area 51, which the locals would have been able to confirm regardless, but whatever. I could just imagine after the release of this information, all of the locals start connecting the dots about all the missing people in their area and blame it on the aliens. I would love to speak to some of the locals and see what they actually think and say. That would be fascinating. Anyways, they kept Area 51 a secret for so long that there must be a number of darker secrets within it that we don't know about. You can only assume. In our number 5 spot, we have the US military base. Author of Area 51, An Uncensored History of America's Top Secret Military Base by Annie Jacobson, has been quoted as saying that yes, Area 51 is filled with secrets, but these secrets are around creating weapon systems and surveillance platforms that no one can think of, for the US military. Hence the reason it needs to remain a secret so they can one-up their opponent. Annie has gone on to say that if everyone could think of what they were doing, then they wouldn't be doing their job correctly. Apparently, Area 51 is the birthplace of what is called ISR intelligence. Why on earth would they not understand most earthly aircraft at this point in time in the world? They are working on reverse engineering alien spacecraft. I believe it. In our number 4 spot, we have secret disappearances. In the area of Area 51, there have been a lot of reportings of disappearances. Some of young people and some are older. It has been reported that these disappearances are tied to Area 51, as some believe it's the aliens within the base that are taking these people. But most likely, the actual people of Area 51 are taking these people as test subjects, as there is no sign of them ever again after they disappear. That's what I think, at least. Where are they going to, and why is it so often within the vicinity of the base? Questions only the insiders would most likely know the answers to. In our number 3 spot, we have the Nevada Triangle phenomena. A lot of people are very well aware of the Nevada Triangle phenomena, and we're pretty positive that the people of Area 51 would know the dark secrets around it. From Las Vegas to Reno, Reno to Fresno, and Fresno to Las Vegas, there have been many reports of unusual goings-on. Similar to the famous Bermuda Triangle, people disappear forever. Planes go missing, aliens have been spotted, claims of magical rocks, and so much more. The area and all its mysteriousness continues to be a complete mystery. Within the area is the Sierra Mountains, and if you have seen the new Jurassic Park movie, that is where they keep the major dinosaurs. I bet you the dinosaurs are just a front for the truth. That is where they keep the aliens, obviously. Coming up in our number 2 spot, we have portals to a new dimension. Along with the home base for the reptilian race, people believe that Area 51 actually holds the portal to another dimension, which honestly isn't too far-fetched when you hear about the reportings of the people that have gone near the area in the Sierra Mountains and have disappeared, only to have been teleported to a new area. Yep, these are real reportings from seemingly coherent people. The people inside the Area 51 base would know about this, and if strange things like this are happening in this area, then I bet you that it is not a coincidence that there's a secret government base right smack in the middle of it. Coincidence?
I think not, sir. And our number 1 spot today, we have time travel. Along with the portal to another dimension theory, there is also a theory that the people of Area 51 are hiding a time travel machine. That's right. We know that scientists in testing facilities around the world have been playing with speeds that are too fast to imagine. So it is possible that something has been invented to travel time. A lot of people say, yes, this is probably possible, especially with the rise of people claiming that they have time traveled from the future. However, some of their claims have been inaccurate, such as, Donald Trump being the last US president, or that World War III would be in 2015. In any case, if there is a time travel machine, then Area 51 employees would possibly know about it. At least the higher ups would, even if the employees didn't know what they were working on.
So starting off this list strong, in at number 10, let's talk about the 1954 meteorite that fell from space and it actually hit someone. This right here is Anne Elizabeth Fowler Hodges. She became a part of history when she survived being struck by a fragment of a meteorite. I mean, how many people can say that? The Sylacauga meteorite is the first documented extraterrestrial object to have injured a human being. So let me tell you guys what happened. A piece of this meteorite crashed through the roof of a farmhouse located in Alabama, and it bounced off a large wooden console radio, and then it hit Hodges while she was napping on the couch. Imagine like that's how you woke up. You woke up by being hit by a piece of meteorite that came from outer space. This made headline news, and I was looking into what happened to that meteorite because maybe that woman can sell it and become super rich. I'm not exactly sure on how much they sell for, but probably a lot, right? But this meteorite was actually confiscated by the police, who turned it over to the United States Air Force. So yeah, this woman lucked out. I don't know why she wasn't able to keep it. Moving into number 9, we have the Roswell UFO incident that took place in 1947. Take a look at this. This came crashing down to Earth, and if you search this into Google, you can find these images as well. Clearly looks like an alien, and also you can see more UFO pictures. Can this really be a UFO crash site? Well, there are obviously many conspiracy theories around this crash, because the US military stated that it is a United States Army Air Force balloon crash, while others say that this might be one huge cover-up and it's actually an alien spacecraft. What do you guys believe? I'm going with it might be an alien spacecraft. And at number 8, we have a piece of the moon. It's always scarier taking pieces of the moon because you just never know what type of airborne bacteria can live on it. There was actually a lunar meteorite found in northern Africa not too long ago, and just a tiny piece of it sold for more than $600,000. Imagine a piece of the moon just fell into your backyard, making you instantly a millionaire. There hasn't been a long-term human exposure to the lunar environment, but apparently the exposure to lunar dust can actually result in severe health risks from direct exposure or exposure from over time. So saying that, whoever owns a piece of the moon, hopefully they're keeping it well contaminated. Alright, number 7, you guys saw it in the intro of this video, you saw a little clip of it, but let's talk about the 2017, which was not too long ago. Well, I'm talking about the discovery of the Oumuamua, which was the first interstellar object ever detected in our solar system. Oumuamua, hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. Probably not, but in Hawaiian, it actually translates to first-time visitor from far away. Of course, when this object was made public, millions of people questioned, is it aliens? Others ask, where did it come from, or what does this mean for us? Could this be an invasion on Earth? Well, scientists from Harvard University believe yes. This could actually be signs of alien civilization. When you hear about a bold claim like that, coming from Harvard scientists, it actually makes you wonder. When Oumuamua traveled through our solar system, it actually didn't travel on a normal path. And as you know, as normal objects would travel in, and it's usually due to the sun's gravity, but instead it made its own path. So it makes us think maybe this thing was powered by some sort of thrusters. So it could be plausible that it was a spacecraft. Number 6, we have a satellite that fell to Earth. Have you guys heard the story of the Cosmos 954? Well, Me neither. I had to do the research for this one. Well, back on January 24th in 1978, a Soviet satellite malfunctioned, which prevented a safe separation of its onboard nuclear reactor, so pieces of the cosmos entered Earth, shattering around northern Canada. Now, this is pretty messed up. Luckily, no one was killed by this. Just imagine if like North Korean satellite crashed on American soil. I mean, that might spark World War III. So there is actually a law that everyone has to follow when it comes to space. So under the terms of the 1972 Space Liability Convention, whoever launched an object into outer space is liable for damages caused by that object. So saying that, the Canadian government billed the Soviet Union over $6 million for the cost of the cleanup and also for additional compensation for future unpredicted expenses. But the USSR paid just $3 million. From a failed USSR satellite to something that you would never expect coming from space, or should I say you wouldn't expect someone coming from space. An alien? Well, at number 5, let me introduce you guys to Fearless Felix, who is not an alien. He's just a crazy person.
Jumper away. Speed 725. Showing Felix in a stable.
Is this real life right now? That is absolutely insane. Why? I have been skydiving, but I jumped from like 8 to 10,000 feet. Felix jumped from over 128,000 feet. This guy is absolutely nuts. I think this guy almost reached the moon. Okay, maybe not quite. This guy wasn't inside of Earth and when he jumped, but luckily for him, it was a huge success. Okay, let me take you guys over to Mongolia, in at number 4. There was this 2-ton object that crashed to the Earth near the Mongolian capital back in 2019. This object was added to the MUFON Witness database, which is actually the UFO Network's database. I didn't know there was a UFO database. How many aliens are on it? So people are actually believing this foreign object might be a UFO. The object looks like it has a rocket or a jet engine. It seems like the object came crashing down in a field of cows and no one knows what it is. On Reddit, people believed that it might be a hydrogen tank, and a lot of people think that this picture might actually be fake because one person pointed out, where's the crater that a heavy and large object would create? I mean, that is a pretty valid point. It's time to time travel for a sec, in at number 3. Let me take you guys back like 80,000 years ago, I know it's a long time, and let's talk about the Huba meteorite that came crashing down on Earth. It wasn't until 1920 when a farmer found it on his field. Well, this thing weighs 60 tons, and it is known to be the largest known meteorite to be found. Today, it has been turned into a national monument, so now it's a great tourist attraction. Moving into number 2, let's talk about the meteorite that changed the history on Earth, like literally. More specifically, well, let's talk about the massive meteorite that might have been responsible for the extinction of the dinosaurs. If you guys don't believe this theory, what wiped out the dinosaurs, let me know in the comment section below and be as stupid as you guys want. I'll see what you guys type down there. Okay, that asteroid that you guys saw must have been huge if it left no dinosaurs behind. It is believed that the asteroid or comet was about 11 to 81 kilometers long, which is super massive. Finally, number 1, I saved the scariest for last. NASA actually predicts that in 2023, there's going to be an asteroid that is on a collision course with Earth that can do some pretty serious damage. The asteroid is twice the size of Big Ben, and I looked up Big Ben, and Big Ben is massive. And then imagine Big Ben, and then times it by 2, and then adding like fire all around it. That can ruin a whole city. Imagine if that hit like a dense city like New York, or what about if it hit like Shanghai, China? A population of over 24 million people. That can wipe out everyone. My biggest question right now is how accurate is NASA? I'm hoping that they're not too accurate. But then again, if NASA wasn't accurate, I don't know if that would be more scarier.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Mystery House. This is a pretty recent weird discovery that was made in November of last year by the China National Space Administration rover Yutu-2. This rover travels around the far side of the moon, exploring and giving us insights into what lies beyond our point of view. This rover has been traveling through the 186-kilometer wide Von Karman crater, and this is when the rover ended up spotting what appeared to be a sort of cube-shaped unidentified object, which is now being referred to as a mystery house. The rover is now on its way to investigate further, but we don't yet quite have the answers to this mystery. When the mystery house was first spotted, it wasn't exactly far from the rover, as it was only 80 meters away, but that does not mean the rover can get there quickly. The approach for this rover is expected to take somewhere from 2 to 3 lunar days, which is about 2 to 3 months in Earth time. This is because the rover moves quite slowly, and the path to explore this cube object is not a clear one. While we patiently wait for the answers, we can always speculate. Drop a comment down below with your best guesses, and who knows, maybe we'll come up with the next viral conspiracy theory. In our number 9 spot today, we have the green gel, another discovery that was made by the Yutu-2 rover, which first made its lunar landing in February of 2019, came in August of that year. On Lunar Day 8, which began on July 25th, the rover was doing its thing, finding its way through an area that was filled with a bunch of small impact craters. On July 28th, as the team here on Earth was preparing to power down the rover for its little midday nap, which is meant to protect the machine from high temperatures and radiation from the sun, which, if you take away all that scary space stuff, sounds like the cutest little thing ever, a little rover nap. But anyway, as this thing's getting ready for its little rover nap, one member on the team was checking over some images that were taken by the rover's main camera, and that's when they spotted a small crater that seemed like it contained some sort of material that had a color and a sort of luster that was significantly different from the lunar area surrounding it. The team then changed the plans they had for the rover and decided that instead of going west, which was next on the schedule, they instead would take a little detour to go and check out this mystery material. The rover carefully made its way over to the crater and examined it with both its visible and near-infrared spectrometer, which is a thing that detects lights that are scattered or reflected off of material, which helps to reveal what they're made up of. For a while, no one knew exactly what the substance was, and it was only being described as being gel-like and being a weird color, but after almost a year of more research, it was finally identified. It's rock! More specifically, rock that was melted together, most likely in the heat of impact from a meteorite. It's insane that something like that created a dark green glistening impact melt, but it's also very cool. I'm just glad we got down to the bottom of this mystery. In our number 8 spot today, we have orange colored moon. Okay, I'm gonna be honest with you. This wasn't exactly found on the far side of the moon. I know, I get it, you're upset, but I just truly thought it was so cool. I really wanted to share it with you guys, so bear with me. All the way back in 1972, Apollo 17 astronaut and geologist Harrison Schmitt was exploring around the Taurus Littrow landing site when he stumbled upon some orange-colored soil. It was a completely unexpected find, and one that they weren't quite sure about. What was causing this soil to get its orange color, and why was it different from all the other soil around it? Luckily, especially since it's been so long, they've been able to look more into it, and there are actually some answers to this moon mystery. After more research, lunar geologists were able to conclude that the orange soil happened as a result of an explosive volcanic eruption that occurred over 3.64 billion years ago. That's so cool! This orange soil exists because of molten drops spraying out from an awesome lunar volcanic eruption billions of years ago. Space never fails to absolutely amaze me. I'm starting to think that geologists have the coolest job in the world, by the way. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Tsiolkovsky crater. This is obviously a crater, and it has been named after the Russian scientist Konstantin Tsiolkovsky. It was originally discovered on photographs that were sent back to Earth from the Russian spacecraft Luna 3. This crater is a large impact crater that lies in the southern hemisphere, but you might be sitting there thinking, there's a lot of craters on the moon, so what makes this one so special? Well, this crater is actually one of the most important figures found on the far side of the moon because it has a complex central peak and a smooth, lava-flooded floor on top of a few other interesting geographical features that make it a very exciting and important place for future lunar exploration. In our number 6 spot today, we have reflections. Like I mentioned before, for a long time it was widely believed that the far side of the moon was referred to as the dark side of the moon because it didn't receive any sunlight, rather than the truth, which is that the name is only to suggest that it's the side we know little about because we can't see it. That is why this discovery was a bit of a shock to some people. Not only is the far side of the moon not dark and does receive sunlight, but the far side of the moon actually reflects more light than our near side. This is because the side that we see has these incredibly dark, smooth, low-lying plains that are from ancient seas of molten magma that were on the moon, and while this is incredibly fascinating, it doesn't really reflect light very well. And while the far side reflects light better, it's still not that great. The moon is significantly darker than it appears to us, with most of the surface being a color closer to that of asphalt. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Sea of Moscow. This is a lunar mar that is one of the very few that sit on the far side of the moon, which is exactly what makes it so fascinating, as well as the fact that we aren't exactly sure of its origins. Just so we're all on the same page, lunar mar is the large, dark basaltic plains that are located on the moon. The basaltic plains are of course made up of basalt, which is a result of the rapid cooling of low viscosity lava that is rich in magnesium and iron that is at the surface or very near to the surface, and this appears both on the Earth and on the moon. For a while it was believed that this was formed due to some ancient volcanic eruption, but there is also speculation that it may have been from a meteorite cluster impact instead. Either way, whichever is responsible for this lunar mar, the moon sure was having a very stressful time. In our number 4 spot today, we have the crust. Remember how people used to believe that there was a face on the moon? Well, that was thanks to that lunar mar we just talked about. So while the Sea of Moscow and things sort of similar do exist on the far side of the moon, there really isn't a lot of Maria on the side that we can't see. What was called the Lunar Far Side Highlands problem became a thing of human interest in 1959 when that Soviet Luna 3 was able to send the first images of the dark side of the moon all the way back to Earth. On the side of the moon we can see, the near side, we see a lot of variation in coloring, and that is due to this Maria. This knowledge is what led to scientists being shocked when they first saw the other side. The far side, because the far side doesn't look the same as the near side at all. While a lot of the near side is Maria, the far side is mostly mountains and craters, and this led to the question and mystery of why. For 55 years this question plagued researchers, but now we think we may have an answer. Scientists realized that this difference and the reason for the lack of Maria might just be due to the difference in the crustal thickness of the side of the moon we can see and the far side, and this is just the consequence of how the moon originally formed. The most widely accepted answer of how the moon formed is the idea of some sort of Mars-size object slamming into Earth shortly after the planet came into existence, and this gigantic impact flung a bunch of stuff out into space, and this would eventually form our moon. That's like the very basis of the theory. So after this impact, the moon and Earth were both super hot, like so hot that parts of them vaporized, which created a disk of rock, magma, and vapor found around the Earth. Then, since the moon is smaller, it cooled faster, but the moon used to be like 20 times closer to us than it is now, so the far side of the moon cooled faster than the near side, and this created a difference in temperature between the two halves, which then led to impact the crustal formation on the moon. That was a lot of info, but how crazy is that? I always find it so interesting to learn about how each and every step in the formation of our solar system has affected the way things are in ways we don't even really fully realize. In our number 3 spot today, we have craters. Okay, so now we know about why one side has more Maria, but now why does the far side have more craters than the near side? For a while, people thought this was because the Earth was acting as a sort of shield for the moon, but we now know that that is not true. The Earth only obscures about 4 square degrees out of 41,000 square degrees of the sky that can be seen from the moon, so obviously this means that the Earth is actually a terrible shield for the moon. This is what led researchers to believe that lava flows are more likely responsible, and this definitely goes back to the crust as well and the origins of the moon that we just discussed. The crust of the moon mostly consists consists of plagioclasts, which were formed when aluminum and calcium condensed and combined with silicates in the mantle of the moon. Like we talked about earlier, since the far side was, well, further from the super hot, slower cooling Earth side after that big impact, these elements cooled sooner and the crust that formed was thicker. So when meteor impacts happened on the near side of the moon, there was a more likely chance of them cracking into the thinner crust, which then releases the basaltic lava. But on the far side of the moon, the thicker crust puts up much more of a fight, and now the moon is just left with these cool battle scars. In our number 2 spot today, we have the South Pole Aitken Basin. Speaking of craters on the far side of the moon, this one is an immense impact one. Measured to be roughly 2,500 kilometers in diameter and between 5.2 to 8.2 kilometers deep, this is one of the largest known impact craters in our entire solar system. That is no easy feat and definitely means that the moon has seen its fair share of cosmic disturbances. This basin is not only the largest and deepest on the moon, but it is also the oldest. While this is located on the far side of the moon, apparently just the outer rim of the basin can be seen from Earth, and this is due to the huge mountain chain that is called the Leibniz Mountains. Remember those missions launched by the CNSA that we started this list off with? Well, one of their spacecrafts actually landed in this basin in 2019 and began to explore all around it, which means that all it has to offer is soon to be uncovered. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Eastern Sea. This is a lunar mare that is located on the western border of the near side and far side of the moon and is partially visible, but pretty difficult to see from Earth. What is so cool about this one is the way it shows up on lunar images, kind of like a target ring bullseye. It is believed that this is an impact crater that was caused by an asteroid-sized object. Estimated to be around 64 kilometers in diameter, traveling at speeds of around a calm, casual 15 kilometers per second. This collision is said to have caused ripples in the lunar crust, which is what gives it that ring effect. At the moment, we don't have samples directly from this area, so we aren't sure what the exact age is yet, but it is thought to be the moon's most recent or youngest impact basin, thought to be quite a bit younger than the Imbrium Basin, which is about 3.85 billion years old.
At number 10, we have Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. And you think space, and where does your mind go? Star Wars or Star Trek? Well, congratulations if it's the former, because a little bit of Star Wars spent a little bit of time in space. Back in 2007, the space shuttle Discovery launched the STS-120 astronaut crew with an iconic prop on board with them. The lightsaber Mark Hamill used as Luke Skywalker back in Star Wars back in 2007 joined real astronauts in orbit for 2 whole weeks. An astronaut named Jim Riley said that there is a fine line between science fiction and reality, and the lightsaber served as a neat little link between the 2 space themes. Just imagine, they said they didn't open it, but if they did, they probably, like, let's be real, they did. They just opened it and they were like, phew. That's what I would. But let's go on to number 9, a corned beef sandwich. Now, if you're gonna go on a trip into space, you know it's gonna be a long one. And astronauts, they don't get the best food on board, getting most of their food freeze-dried or just nutrients they suck out of a pouch. But astronaut John Young was hoping for something just a little bit tastier. On March 23rd, 1965, John smuggled a corned beef sandwich on Flight Gemini 3. He got the sandwich from fellow astronaut Wally Schirra, who bought it from a Cocoa Beach, Florida deli. Now, because of the low gravity on the flight, it began to disintegrate when John took a bite, but he did say it was pretty good, and just if it would hold together, you know? All my sandwiches fall apart anyways, sadly. Anyways, another thing that made its way into space? At number 8, we have a saxophone. Now, for his birthday in 2007, Thomas Pesquet got a fun musical gift, his own saxophone. But it wasn't an ordinary delivery since Thomas lived on SpaceX's cargo craft at the time. It was delivered on the SpaceX Dragon alongside some French macaroons for his birthday, and yeah, he said he's a little out of practice since he stopped playing while he was training to be an astronaut, but isn't that cool? Once the workday is done, I can imagine that floating in space, you know, could get a little boring after a while. But if you have some smooth, jazzy tunes on a woodwind to keep you going, it'll all be alright, you know? You like jazz? Keep the meme references in. Okay. At number 7, piece of a plane. When Neil Armstrong went to the moon in 1969, he brought a little piece of a plane with him. And not just any plane too, but a piece of the rudimentary airplane the Wright brothers flew in 1903 when the aircraft came a few feet off the ground. Now, Neil had with him some of the fabric and some of the propeller of the Wright Flyer, and this was as a homage to pioneers that paved the way in aviation and beyond. Which, of course, all makes sense because the Wright brothers Flyer 1 was the first successful heavier-than-air powered aircraft. And so, you gotta respect those who came along before you, you know?
Alright, get ready for it. This one's special. At number 6, we have dirt. And yeah, okay, obviously it's not just any dirt, but it is dirt. The dirt that did go into space came from the pitcher's mound at Yankee Stadium. And you might be thinking, why, Abby? So basically, Garrett Reisman is not only an astronaut, but also a huge Yankees fan. And he was flying on Space Shuttle Endeavour's STS-123 mission back in 2008, and astronauts are allowed to bring mementos, so he thought, hey, why not bring up a little bit of dirt from the stadium of my favorite team? And it seems worth it when you find out he also threw the first ceremonial first pitch from space in microgravity. So the man's dedicated and he's gonna go down in history. So seems good to me. Now, the next one hasn't just traveled into space, but it has stayed there. At number 5 is the fallen astronaut. Now, not all people who went to the moon made it back safely. It is a risky job to be an astronaut after all. So now, resting on the moon is a small aluminum figurine by Belgian artist Paul van Hooijdonk. It is stylized to try to depict an astronaut in a spacesuit as a way to commemorate those who have passed in the advancement of space exploration. It was put on the moon in 1971 next to a plaque listing 14 American and Soviet men who were known to have died at that point. This was organized by astronaut David Scott before his Apollo 15 lunar mission, and now it serves as a nice tribute to all those who give their life to space. And now, people haven't been the only mammals to not make it through a space mission, which brings me to number 4. Lots of dead space monkeys, many called Albert. Now, before people were sent into space, animals were used to test the waters, or the space. Now, in the US, monkeys or chimpanzees were used for this, and many were named Albert. After the first one they named Albert, they just decided to keep that name going. In some cases, when the apes passed away, the spacecrafts weren't reported as recovered, which has led people to believe that there may be some space junk out there with some monkeys still in them. Now, not all space places used monkeys back then. During the space race, the Soviets were using dogs to see how the atmosphere would affect creatures, which obviously sparked many heated debates on animal testing, but they don't do that anymore, so yay. Now let's move on to a lighter note, sports! At number 3 we have a golf ball. On the Apollo 14 trip, Alan Shepard decided to bring a couple of golf balls with him on his trip to the moon. He decided, hey, I'll take a few shots on the moon, so he attached a modified 8-iron club head to the end of a device that traditionally collects samples of moon dust, and then he just let her rip. Now, video footage shows that he missed the mark a few times and hit the ground before hitting the ball, but come on, can we really blame the guy? Gravity is different on the moon, so you have to give a guy some time to adjust, right? He sent one 200 yards, which, you know, isn't too bad, but then he sent another one for what he said went on for miles and miles. So one scientist did the math and said Alan was right. With the right hit, a golf ball could be sent about 2.5 miles. So at that point, that's quite a bit more than the world record of 515 yards, and I just want to say, Dad, can you do better than that? Just kidding, love you, Dad. Okay, bye. Let's move on to number 2, Buzz Lightyear toy. I mean action figure, whatever you call it, okay? So to infinity and beyond, and to infinity and beyond good old Buzz Lightyear went. Back in 2008, an action figurine of the Toy Story astronaut hopped aboard the International Space Station with Discovery mission STS-124. He had a jolly old time, possibly missing some other toys to hang out with, but returned 15 months later on STS-128. So now, before Lightyear went on his journey, he was even given the all clear to go by the other Buzz astronaut, Buzz Aldrin. In a promo video for NASA, Buzz Aldrin even told Buzz Lightyear that he, Buzz Aldrin, was the real Buzz. And yes, it's true. Buzz Lightyear's name was inspired by Buzz Aldrin, so this second man to step out on the moon has a legacy more than the moon, also Buzz Lightyear. Toy Story. Yes. But let's finish up with number 1, tardigrades, or water bears. So if you're wondering what these things are, haven't heard it through the grapevine, let me break it down for you. Tardigrades are very tiny, yet microscopic, 8-legged creatures that are known to survive extreme temperatures. They can withstand being heated to 150 degrees Celsius and frozen to almost absolute zero. So knowing this, scientists did experiments with tardigrades and found out that some could withstand being in the vacuum of space. And this is because they can be brought back to life decades after being dehydrated, or it's at least possibly connected to that. So right now there are some of these tardigrades, aka water bears, aka moss piglets, on the moon. Now this is since an Israeli spacecraft crash landed on the moon this April. Also, some people think they are still alive, so maybe they'll be the first inhabitants on the moon. That'd be kinda cool, little bears, microscopic, but yeah.